Test, 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 test. Okay.
Is there Sunday school going on today?
Supposed to be.
Oh, here. Yeah, so nice. Because there's only one Saturday.
Yeah, it was awful.
Oh, see if anybody shows up. That's weird.
Yes. Hello, hello.
Hello. Here at the right time.
Yes. We'll see if anybody else is. Thanks so much for being here. I know the schedule's kind of all confusing.
Yeah. And then it goes back to the normal schedule.
And then it changes.
Changes,
And yeah.
Yeah, it's like a week by week. Like, is it, do you have a dual ed? Like,
Our plan is to do it every week.
every month?
Yeah. At least until
And
August.
eventually it's gonna go be after this
Mhm.
10-month service.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I'm up to. I can deal with change, but I just have to remember.
Have to get ready for it, yeah.
I'll sit back here and wait. I know. It's so hard for us to keep track of time when we've got all these gadgets and all these things and, you know. You know, half an hour shouldn't be such a problem, but I talked to two people and they said, oh, to the lake service and they don't, so they're not used to coming this early. Gosh,
And I've always been a morning person.
I am too.
There's an alcove. There's an alcove.
I start to fade about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And now I have a new routine. So I get passed out, but then I start to fade like at 5 o'clock. I've been using Google more lately on my laptop, and I'm getting so much junk mail. I get like at least 40 every day. And I used to get maybe 6 to 10, but it was manageable. And sometimes
Yeah, I have my son. That he read a lot.
Yeah. Well, see, I'm going down this rabbit hole on Google and everything. So now I'm getting things from. Today I got a whole bunch of stuff about weddings. And I thought, like last year, somebody was getting married and I had to look up whatever was happening and where the bridal registry was, but that was last year. Oh, I like that.
Try to make it full screen here.
You know, St. John's uses some of that on their bulletins.
Uh-huh.
It's black and white, but it's that, and they've got, especially for, Easter week.
Well, thanks so much for being here. I feel a little awkward using the microphone up here with such a small group, but we do want to make sure that anyone who is watching online or watching this later can hear the sound. So thank you. Were you here last week?
I was here last week.
And Kim, you were here last week as well, yes. So you recall we were looking at some portrayals of Thomas showing his wounds, or Jesus showing his wounds to Thomas, Thomas inspecting Jesus' wounds, and the story of the road to Emmaus. And we looked at Caravaggio, and we looked at the contemporary Chinese artist He Qi, and the two of them did both of those scenes. Well, I have a few more images of the Emmaus story that we didn't get to last time. So this is the first one. This is by Daniel Bennell, who is an artist that we looked at a few weeks ago. And what do you notice?
Kind of, not chaos.
Uh-huh. There's a lot going on.
Yeah. Color and shape, like something is happening.
Yeah.
Something is evolving.
Yeah, I love that. Something is happening, and they're following the path. What I find really interesting is that in the text, when they are walking along with Jesus, they don't know that it's him. And they're like, haven't you heard what's going on? And it's not until they get to Emmaus and they're sitting around the table and Jesus breaks the bread, and that's when they recognize him. So at this point in the story, they're not so aware of what's going on. But yet when they think back on it later, when they go and tell about it, they say, weren't our hearts burning within us when we were walking on the road? And I think that's so interesting that, yeah, it was clearly a moment when something big was happening. They didn't realize it at the time, but then looking back, they can see, oh, our hearts really were on fire, even if we didn't know it.
Fire or warmth or
Yeah.
they're walking away from it.
Fire, warmth, it's almost kind of enveloping them. Yeah. Jesus is in the middle. Yeah. Right. And this sort of darkness at the bottom. We're looking at this painting by Daniel Bennell of The Walk to Emmaus. And Kim observed that it clearly looks like something is happening. And how interesting it is in that story that at the time they are walking on the road with Jesus, they don't recognize him. It's not until they're sitting at the table and he breaks the bread. And then when they're telling about it afterward, they say, weren't our hearts burning within us as we were walking on the road? Even if it didn't seem like they felt that at the time, looking back on it, they were like, yeah, this was a moment that our hearts were on fire. Anything else we notice here? So I love that sort of, contrast between the bright and the dark, kind of both at the same time. Yeah.
The grave makes
Yeah.
it glow in the dark.
Exactly.
The light is
Exactly. So I listened to the artist talking a little bit about this painting, and the title is actually Contemplating Angels on the Road to Emmaus. And he doesn't mean that the people are contemplating angels. He means the angels are contemplating this mystery. And he ties it back to the story of Jesus' birth, when there's a multitude of the heavenly host who are watching and praising God because of what they're seeing going on, and saying maybe this was another moment when the whole heavenly host is excitedly watching what's happening, is pondering the mystery of the incarnation and the resurrection. I think there's supposed to be lots of different things.
But that's neat about that. Sure.
Yeah. And I'm struck by how this is apparently a very large, like maybe almost wall height canvas, and how small the figures are. And yet, they're not just something you're going to miss. They're clearly, your eye is drawn to Jesus, as you noticed. That central figure is even extra illuminated, even despite everything going on.
I'm sure somebody said that one of the centerpieces is the tomb, what looks
Yeah.
like the tomb.
Yep.
Full of light, and all this light and color is emerging from that.
That is now empty.
Yeah, I mean, you usually think of the road to Emmaus, our hearts burning within us, that the centrality is like their hearts.
Mm-hmm.
And they're kind of these tiny figures in it.
Yeah.
But the whole cosmos is full of something
Right.
glorious happening out of that big tomb.
I love that. The whole cosmos is full of something, this glorious happening.
They're like part of it, but
Yeah.
it's actually sort of they're in it, but it's not just about that.
Right. Unlike the painting that we looked at last week, where we really did focus on the experience of the people walking with Jesus. This really is about what's happening in the world. Even the angels are noticing, and they get to be in on it too, in a small way. Yeah, isn't that so cool? You can buy a print.
Stained glass.
Yeah. Well, speaking of stained glass, do we want to look at something else? So this is another detail depiction of the Emmaus story. And this is actually a stained glass window. This is in the chapel at Biola University in California. Oops. And this is a set of 3 stained glass windows. So this is the first one, Supper at Emmaus. And what do we see here?
Wow.
Yeah, it's so we've got here the hand holding a loaf of bread.
Where's that?
Right here.
Oh,
It's almost like you're imagining Jesus kind of has the bread in 2 hands. It's glowing, but there's a wound mark.
wow.
So it's Jesus's hand that still bears the scar from the nail, and it has this star emanating from it. And when the artist who did this stained glass piece, when he was talking a little bit about it, he actually recalled back to the star at Bethlehem as well. So it's interesting that 2 different artists that portrayed this scene are kind of making connections between Christ's birth and the Emmaus story, of kind of Christ coming to be with us in a physical, embodied way, the incarnation. So this is the first part of the 3-part set, of the hand that still bears the star offering the bread. Then
For
here,
what it's worth, what's this sort of red thing to the left of his hand in the star?
I think that's his other arm.
That pink thing?
That's what I thought, of sort of like, but I could be wrong. Do we have another idea?
Art?
No, it's,
It's art.
yeah.
Well, here is, if you thought this one was hard to parse out, here's the second one in the set. And this is a floor-to-ceiling window. Wait, I'm sorry, that's the, nope. Here's the second one in the set. That's the floor-to-ceiling window. And the central figures here are the disciples who are bowing their heads in recognition of who Jesus is. They've noticed who he actually is, and they're bowing down in worship. Strange, right?
The black and white piece at the front is a head bow.
There's one here and one here.
And what's in the middle?
What is in the middle? Do we think that's a Christ figure?
It looks sort of like a vertical standing person with blood on his head.
Yeah. Maybe a person with blood on his head because he was wearing a crown of thorns.
Yeah. Weird.
And then here, so it's
But
interesting.
the guy at the bottom took it away from him.
Yeah, that's what I don't get.
Yeah. Yeah, the idea is apparently that they're sort of prostrate, lying face down on the ground. And then here, it just keeps getting weirder, folks. This is the 3rd in the series. What do we make of this one?
I can't even decide what it is.
It almost looks like a woman.
Oh, at the bottom.
With her fist up. But it's. I think it's like a hand.
The official description is that finally, the multiple figures on the door, and it's interesting, this is the stained glass that is on the door of this one part of the sanctuary. They portray Christ disappearing as soon as the disciples realized who he was, which is a weird part of the story that we don't usually talk about.
Yeah, what part of the story is that? Oh, he went through the door. He left.
So this is Luke
After
After the supper.
he just leaves.
Mhm.
Okay. So that's Christ.
That's Christ disappeared.
Disappearing from their sight.
And that's that in the background, sort of.
Or maybe it's kind of this process of disappearing and
Yeah,
then
like,
there's
it's-
resurrected, transfigured body.
Yeah.
It
What's
is.
what's the red blotch with the white in the lower right
That's
corner?
And like the Sacred Heart of Jesus is often a theme in,
Oh, yeah.
traditional art.
From the distance, I thought this was like his forearm, and he was going like this. But that's not a forearm, because there's a line. Oh, that's a heart.
Yeah. So no. So the way that this is a chapel on a university campus.
And
At
conservative Christian
pretty
college.
conservative Christian college, Biola University in California. And they have this pretty large chapel space, and the front has this really cool, like bright, glowing, shiny gold image of the resurrection. There are two little alcoves off to each side, and the one side has stained glass windows of the story of Cain and Abel, the first story of murder, the first death recorded in the Bible. Jesus instituting the Last Supper and the crucifixion. That's on one side. The sort of Holy Week, sin, death, and yet Last Supper that comes out of it. In the middle is the big resurrection scene. Then across from that one is this little alcove that has these three windows of the road to Emmaus. Also the story of Christ's baptism and images of Christ's sower. And so it's really interesting, the sort of the pairings of things. This is just a really short video that'll kind of zoom in a little bit more. And the whole thing is only 3 minutes, so that tells us about all the sets of windows in that little alcove. So we can watch this. And there's a narrator talking, and then the male voice is the artist who designed the windows.
To the right of the stage is an alcove containing 3 different groupings of stained glass. Closest to the stage, we see a depiction of Jesus in Emmaus, breaking bread in the presence of 2 disciples, who at first do not recognize their resurrected Christ. In the top window, you see a loaf lying on the table and the hand of Christ, showing his wound from the cross. It was precisely as Christ breaks bread with his disciples that his identity is revealed to them.
But in the wound comes light out, so there is like a star. You see, it's not just a wound in the middle of the hand, it's also a star that tells about rebirth and that now he's left. But he came back like the star when he was born in Bethlehem, where you had the star that told about this is what you should look for when you are a shepherd, because that's where the new life has been born.
What you should look for.
The long window on the right shows the 2 disciples bowing their heads in respect when they realize that the stranger is their Christ. The multiple figures on the door portray Christ disappearing as soon as the disciples realized who he was. Looking to the right, you see a large blue window, with water representing baptism and the promise of new life. This contrasts with the large red window in the other alcove, which represents the Eucharist and Christ's sacrifice on the cross.
We all know that Christ was baptized in the river of Jordan, and there in that window is beautiful fall of blue colors that comes down, which is on the opposite side of the red colors of the sacrifice, as I just told about a moment ago, where you saw the tears and the blood drops falling down, and you saw also the crown of thorns, and now you see hidden in all that blue, there's a face also that receives all that water in the river of Jordan.
Continuing to the right, we see a grouping of 3 windows, illustrating the theme of Christ as the sowing farmer. Through the planting of wheat, which represents the bread of life, Christ sows new life.
here I made him with a huge red sky behind him, which of course could be also very bloody to look at, so to say. But there is something called the field of blood around Golgotha. There's old legions that said because of the blood that was there, then the whole field was red, because that was the blood that came out as flowering. But here I make the sky red, and it is something I want to show are disappearing. Now this is away, and under it is the ground now golden and full of light.
Our tour continues just around the corner, towards the main entrance.
So really different from some of the other ways that we've seen this depicted.
I don't know how I feel sitting in that chapel.
Stained glass is a
Trying to figure out what.
Which is kind of the point of a lot of liturgical art. You were gonna say?
But stained glass is hard because you can't like blend, like a painting, blend colors. I mean, they're pieces. I don't know how they do it really, but it's.
And especially, you know, like things like this where there's lots of different colors. Like, that's incredible.
The threads having bread on it, is that because Christ was bleeding?
Good question. I mean, this clearly is giving us the indication of the wounds. I almost, if you kind of squint, it almost looks like a sacrificed lamb.
At first I thought it was.
Yeah, I didn't even realize it was part of the bread.
Is that part called the road to Emmaus?
This whole thing, so this is the official description from their chapel tour page on their website. Says, Supper at Emmaus. Closest to the right of the stage is a series of 3 stained glass windows illustrating the story of Jesus in Emmaus, breaking bread in the presence of 2 disciples who at first do not recognize their resurrected Christ. Luke 24:28-32. In the top window, you see a loaf lying on the table and the hand of Christ showing his wound from the cross. It is precisely as Christ breaks bread with his disciples that his identity is revealed to them. The long window to the right of the door shows the 2 disciples bowing their heads in respect when they realize that the stranger is their Christ. Finally, the multiple figures on the door portray Christ disappearing as soon as the disciples realized who he was.
Okay.
So that's what we've got. But if you want to see some of the other windows and you want to see the big resurrection wall, Google Biola University Chapel, and there's a whole page that gives you like a tour.
Do you have any idea when this was done?
Yes, it was done in. Let me see here.
I mean, the reason I ask is in itself, I mean, we're admitting it's
It was
aesthetically
renovated in 2018.
2018.
The chapel was built in 1975, and then these new windows were commissioned in 2018.
I mean, Biola is a conservative, used to be sort of what you might call fundamentalist Bible college. It stands for the Bible Institute of Los Angeles, Biola. And it was a Bible college that emerged back in the, early 20th century and is very respected now. They have a great philosophy department. And the videos we're going to use are next Sunday school classes from a woman who teaches Old Testament there.
That's when they're referring to the stage. There's
And
that.
that's not stained glass.
That's not stained glass. That's maybe oil painting, maybe mixed media.
I don't know.
Yeah.
How do you spell it?
BIOLA.
Bible Institute of Los Angeles. Biola.
See, I
way.
Well, I like that. Just that whole thing.
So what do you see here? So far, we've looked at representations of Thomas inspecting Jesus' wounds, the walk to Emmaus, and the supper at Emmaus. Here we have another one of the post-resurrection appearances. We saw the supper at Emmaus. Wait, did I pull up the wrong one? I probably pulled up the wrong one. I did pull up the wrong one.
This is,
Sorry about that.
His name is Q.
I was saying, I think some of his art is used on the St. John.
Could be.
Sorry, one moment, please. While I'm getting this ready, do you want to tell us about what we're doing next time?
yes, Mother, just tell us.
Mike will pick it up for anyone who wants to Facebook, but we're going to
You
start
can
using
go to
video
my
curriculum by a woman named Carmen Imes, an Old Testament scholar, and she has a video curriculum that is on, it's called Seminary Now, which does pay, and you get seminary credit by watching these classes. But this is one that is not designed for seminary classes, it's designed for anything. So it's not academic level like graduate school, seminary level, but it is sophisticated. She's charming as all get out, and it's on the nature of the church. And she traces the biblical theme from Old Testament through to the New Testament, what the community of faith, how God has always wanted a partner who is a community, and what community looks like throughout the Bible, and sort of designed for those maybe, amongst others, I guess, but maybe for those that are disillusioned with the church, or wondering, what should we keep doing? Why is this important?
Are you going to insist that someone from membership and fellowship sit in on it?
We can't insist anything.
I know.
Well, I'm on membership.
So, yeah, you'll be there.
And,
But seriously,
Sally
that whole
Jones is on fellowship.
Well, there was
So we
an
have
announcement and
she'll
a bulletin
be there.
insert in
She'll-
worship today, but
She's gone.
somebody didn't get it, so nobody's gonna know that.
but
So we could jump up in the middle of church.
Better listen. But it's we're buying it. It's fairly expensive class, but it's so rich. She's so charming. She's so insightful, and a good Bible teacher. And we'll watch two of them. They're like 10 minutes each or something, or 15 minutes. So I think we'll watch two of them each week, and then we'll have a little time to talk about them instead of making it drag on forever and having half hour talk about each one. We'll watch two, and then talk about it. Watch two, and then talk about it.
Well, thanks for your patience while I...
She's from Biola, so she's seen these.
Isn't that funny?
worshipped in that space. Okay. Well, here we have a different painting that we did not look at last week about a different Bible story that we did not read last week. So thanks for your patience.
Jesus at the barbecue?
Yeah, Jesus and the barbecue. That's exactly what it is. Do you remember that that's one of the stories in after the resurrection? So this is from the Gospel of John. And this is John chapter 21, starting with verse 1, if you want to follow along. Afterward, Jesus appeared again to his disciples by the Sea of Galilee. It happened this way. Simon Peter, Thomas, also known as Didymus, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other disciples were together. "I'm going out to fish," Simon Peter told them, and they said, "We'll go with you." So they went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. Early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize that it was Jesus. He called out to them, "Friends, haven't you any fish?" "No," they answered. He said, "Throw your net on the right side of the boat, and you will find some." When they did, they were unable to haul the net in because of the large number of fish. Then the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, "It is the Lord." As soon as Simon Peter heard him say, "It is the Lord," he wrapped his outer garment around him, for he had taken it off, and jumped into the water. The other disciples followed in the boat, towing the net full of fish, for they were not far from shore, about 100 yards. When they landed, they saw a fire of burning coals there with fish on it, and some bread. Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish you have just caught." So Simon Peter climbed back into the boat and dragged the net ashore. It was full of large fish, 153. But even with so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, "Come and have breakfast." None of the disciples dared ask him, "Who are you?" They knew it was the Lord. Jesus came, took the bread, and gave it to them, and did the same with the fish. This was now the third time Jesus appeared to his disciples after he was raised from the dead. That was from John chapter 21, 1 through 14. So do we notice anything interesting here? Both, either.
Well, the background is realistic.
Yeah.
The foreground, is artistic.
Stylized.
Okay, yeah, which I find kind of disorienting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it too. Yeah. I like the colors. Yeah.
If you looked with blurry vision, it would look like a stained glass window.
Yeah. We just looked at some stained glass windows just before. Yeah.
Sorry.
They were really abstract, and some of us liked it, and some of us hated them. They were fascinating.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
But this is oil, right?
Depends on the
Yeah.
background.
Yeah.
It's very minor.
Yeah.
It just amazed me how often Jesus showed up around the meal.
Yeah. How often, yep.
Just one more reason to love them.
How often Jesus showed up around a meal.
He was providing us sustenance.
Right.
Yeah.
He was going.
In this story, though, Peter recognizes him
Mm-hmm.
before the meal. But
Yeah.
Peter has already seen him at the other meal.
Many of the disciples already have, yeah.
The fact that they again didn't recognize him, I think,
Yeah.
ties into that meal. What we talked about last time about the community,
Yeah.
that sometimes you don't see what you need to see.
Yeah.
Well, he had a different body.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so I think that's part of the
Yeah. Once again, it looks like he's got the loaf of bread in one hand that he's offering, and one of the disciples is reaching out to take it. And his other hand he's holding up. What do you think he's doing there? Is it a blessing? Is it a showing the wound? Is it both? It kind of looks like a hole. Yeah. It's almost like you can sort of see through it to his robe that's back behind it. Yeah. Yeah. This sort of offering himself in two different ways with his two hands, in the loaf of bread and in his hand itself, for them to inspect.
To me, it said, wait,
Ooh,
think about this.
think about this. Yeah.
Don't just take this for granted.
Think about this, be grateful. Think about who is giving you this bread.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You're just mirroring the painting?
So I never thought about this before.
Yeah.
You brought it up in the
resurrection, is this all intentionally training us, well, the disciples first, but now us, to not see him, but still believe?
Ooh, that's a great question.
Yeah, it just seems like, he's reading, you
Yeah.
don't see him, but then he reinforces, I'm with you.
Yeah.
And they don't see him, and
Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah.
I would think that it mirrors our experience. So we sometimes don't see Jesus, but we have faith anyway. That's just common human discipleship. We don't always see what we study. But you said it trains us to do that. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's preparing us, not helping us
Yeah.
to learn how to do that right.
Yeah.
How to have faith even though you don't see it. That is sort of part of the plan.
Yeah.
Really.
And the disciples themselves were being prepared for the time when Jesus would ascend and leave them no longer in his earthly body.
Which is why there's this sort of wait thing.
Yeah.
Wait.
And then all of us who are reading the Gospels, it does also seem like the Gospel writers are intentionally drawing our attention to this. We who do not have Jesus handing us bread in a way that we may immediately recognize. In Bibles...
The bodily thing of Caravaggio,
Yeah.
the doubting Thomas putting his finger in the body, so there's this sort of confidence
Yeah.
that it's true. But these other ones all have this element of mystery that we don't quite even see or know or recognize.
And even in that Caravaggio, like the expressions on the faces were like, what the heck is this? So as much as it was obvious, and clear, here, put your hand here, there was still this, what do we make of that?
Even though they don't recognize Jesus at first,
Yeah.
it's part of the thing they have to be trained towards. They're eating food.
Yeah.
So again, there's this bodily resurrection of creaturely delight that they're having breakfast.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't teach them a sermon and he doesn't take them to heaven, but
They eat breakfast, yeah.
The disciple is looking so humble.
Yeah.
And his hands are open.
Yeah. Yeah.
Receiving.
Receiving. Yeah. What's the figure on the far right, who I'm imagining is another one of the disciples? What's he have in his hand? An oar from the boat.
So they're pausing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they start to go back to their jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know if they were fishing because they were in grief. I've been sermons on this. They like, what do you do when your best friend dies or your Messiah is dead, and then you maybe heard that you see him, you're so confused. So you go back to what you're used to. Let's go back to work.
Yeah.
Or his hobby. If he's
Yeah.
I don't know how to do. I can find solace in repetition and practice of going fishing.
Right. Yeah.
So they go fishing.
And yet they don't catch anything.
And they don't catch anything at first. He shows up and blesses it, but then yet they're going to have to go back there again.
Yeah.
He's still got the oar.
Yeah.
I think they were remembering when he calmed the storm.
Oh, I bet I'm.
Asleep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And yet he was present. Maybe they were remembering his words to them.
This certainly brings back memories.
I think it's kind of reassuring to realize that the disciples did not always recognize
Yeah.
and that we have that same experience.
Mm-hmm.
We don't see.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate the modern stylized, because it's every man, every woman. Rather than when we talk about
Yeah.
the white Jesus or the brown Jesus or the Chinese. Yeah, I mean, it takes it all away.
Yeah.
What year was this, Stephanie?
I think the 90s maybe. He's still alive and working today.
It's still that artist we saw last
Yeah, yes, Ho-Key.
He has a distinctive style.
Yeah, he sure does. And
Still bothers me that Jesus' eye, but one's a
yeah. Yeah. What is going?
Intentional because it's in the other.
Yeah.
No, it's all seeing, it's all possibly catching.
Yeah. I'm wondering if it's maybe one eye pointed to heaven, like emphasizing his relationship with the Father, and one eye pointed out, emphasizing his relationship with the people and the creation around him. Christ, who is both fully divine and fully human. I don't know.
Because the other ones aren't.
Yeah, the other ones aren't. The one figure is looking down, the other is looking more straight ahead, or slightly up.
Can you read that somewhere?
No, I don't know. I probably read it somewhere and don't remember. But no, I have not heard the artist talking about this specific painting, so I'm just wondering things. It also reminds me of the miracles of the multiplication of the loaves and fishes, of Jesus feeding the crowds of 5,000 or 10,000. And here's that basket of fish that for just a couple of people, it looks like that's way more fish than they're going to eat in one meal. And there's going to be leftovers. Right, right? Yeah. Yeah.
It says there are a whole lot, or dozens or something.
Yeah. 154, yeah. Yeah. And it's just this kind of this super abundance, like not even enough for a really good meal, like way more.
Well, the way Jesus is pictured is androgynous, because he could be a woman, he could be a man, it's like his white lipstick on.
Yeah.
That bothered me last week. And then I thought, well, he doesn't have any particular, well,
Yeah.
I don't know, some would argue.
Yeah, I mean, he's got the...
It just looks like it could be a woman.
Yeah. Yeah, all of the characters have the sort of the multicolored faces, like the purple and green. And I think, yeah, Michelle was onto something when she said that it's kind of abstract enough that we can all imagine ourselves in the scene. Any other thoughts about this one?
The stained glass previously,
Mhm.
the moon was in the resurrected Jesus.
Yeah.
And it was depicted as a star, which we watched. It was
Yeah.
should have been. This one is just,
Yeah,
but in both of
which is
them,
fascinating.
they're eating food.
Mm-hmm.
But and so there's this Eucharistic sense of Jesus' blessing. But
Yeah.
the moon is still at a moment.
Yeah. Well, do you want to, anything else that you want to share about this one?
No, it just brings up so many questions in my mind.
Yeah, yeah. That's what good art is for. Well, here is another very different contemporary painting of this scene. This is going to be a painting by Duncan Robertson called Behold, the Resurrection and the Life, also based on this story. Oh dear, I heard someone say. What do we make of this one? Yeah. What do we see?
What's it called again?
I am the it's called, sorry, I just lost it here. It is called Behold, the Resurrection and the Life.
Now there's bread.
There's bread
Wounds.
and wounds.